What does it mean to be a hero? Is it the perseverance of never giving up, the powers to help others, or the bravery to fight even when it looks bad? I think it's smaller than all of these things, but I think it's the most impactful part of being a hero. But let's start at the beginning of our story. Pokemon White released in Japan on September 18th, 2010, and came to North America on March 6th, 2011. It was a game that at the time, I wasn't able to play. I didn't have a DS of my own, since I was only around 5 at the time. As I got older, I really didn't know about this game, because to me, if I didn't have it, the game didn't exist. At least at the small age of 5, that's what my little brain thought. Throughout the years as I got older, I heard so much hype around Alpha Sapphire, Pokemon X and Y, that I completely ignored Black and White. I didn't hear much about them, since everyone was talking about the new games and how cool Mega Evolution was. I knew about Sun and Moon because that came out when I got my 3DS for the first time, so that was my first real Pokemon game, and I loved it to bits. I, however, sold my 3DS to buy a Switch, since at its time of release, I didn't have enough money to pay for a Switch, so I didn't have any more Pokemon games to play. But now in my college years, I got the opportunity to actually buy a DS with money from my actual job. Throughout my life, I was introduced to so many Pokemon that I loved, and I realized that all of them were from Black and White, and yet I never played it. I barely knew what Gen 5 was until I did some research and realized that's where N's from. I know, really stupid stuff, but to me, I was more surprised that I didn't ever have an interest in playing this game. It flew completely under my radar. DS games were now getting really expensive. The Pokemon games themselves go for a pretty penny, and it was really difficult to get a hold of one because of that. I wasn't gonna quit though. I wanted to know what one of the greatest Pokemon games of all time was really like. I wanted to experience this firsthand. I loved all the Pokemon I knew from Gen 5, so I knew it was going to be really fun when I got to start team building. One fateful day at a garage sale, I stumbled upon Pokemon White. There it was, sitting on the shelf. I honestly couldn't believe my eyes because of how rare it was to find it in a garage sale after all of this time. I paid for the game and later put the game in my DS. Unova not only was home to our protagonist, but the greatest game in the Pokemon series. This is how Pokemon White changed my life. For those of you who haven't played Pokemon White, allow me to give you a quick rundown of the game. The game starts with you and your friends, named Bianca and Sharon, all getting your starters at the beginning of the game. No helping Oak out from the start by getting mauled by a freaking dog. These two friends will be with you throughout the whole story and become crucial to the plot. Who would have guessed? As you get your Pokemon and leave your little town, you notice something different. A group of people packed to listen to this one man talk. This is your first instance of Team Plasma and Getsis. They explain that Pokemon don't really want to be with their trainers, and that their goal is to liberate Pokemon from people so they can be free. This in itself for me was such an interesting concept for a so-and-so villainous group that these games really have. I mean, coming from someone whose first Pokemon game had Team Skull, it isn't very hard to see why I thought this. What did bro even do? Shortly after this long yap session, a young man arrives to greet me and Sharon, talking about what he overheard my Pokemon saying. His name is N, and he was able to talk to Pokemon, which we later find out that he is a part of Team Plasma. We decide to have a battle because it's a Pokemon game, but also because N doesn't understand why my Pokemon said what it said. In order for you to understand why this game was so impactful to me, you have to understand why N was so important in this game. N shows up throughout your journey, battling you not just because he is in an evil villain group, but because he wants to understand you. He wants to understand everything about you and your Pokemon because he deemed you special. He deemed you a hero. I wasn't sure why. Why out of all the trainers was I deemed to be a chosen one? Sharon was there when we first met, so why was it that he picked me out? Did it have to do with what my Pokemon said? Shortly after beating the first gym leader and going to challenge the second one, N comes out, realizing that in order to get others to understand his ideals, he needs to be strong. No, not just strong, the strongest. A powerful trainer that will win against every other trainer. So strong that someone would have to beat him in order to challenge his ideals. Then he can show everyone his vision. If they can't beat him in battle, then no ideals are as strong as his. The story goes on with this trope, where he pops up in different places, challenging you again and again in battles, using you almost as a checkpoint for seeing if he was stronger. But yet you keep prevailing. It confuses En because it challenges his ideals of what is right and what is wrong. It's like everything in his brain is telling him that what he was doing is right, but the universe won't prove it. He can't let that happen. He won't let himself be wrong. The Pokemon need to be freed. Besides, he wouldn't really understand a whole lot about other people in the first place. He explains to our trainer after we battle him once more around the 7th gym leader that our Pokemon trusts us. If everyone's Pokemon felt the same way as ours did, then he wouldn't have to liberate everyone's Pokemon. He tells us about Reshiram and Zekrom, which was once one being, split now into two, because they couldn't agree on what should and shouldn't be. A disagreement of ideals. A disagreement on something that never had a solution nor a problem. The only problem was between the two of them. So the legendaries split in half and fought, one for truth and one for ideals. Because they were equal, the battle ended in a stalemate, showing that the fight never truly ended between these two philosophies. En eventually finds Reshiram and captures it. In order for me to beat En, he tells me I must become a hero by finding Zekrom and having it deem me worthy. If I wanted to challenge his ideals, this was my only way in his eyes. The problem is, however, why? Why would En encourage me to seek out a legendary that would help give me the power to beat him? That doesn't make any sense. Isn't his whole goal to be the strongest? To be the trainer no one else can defeat? I'm not too sure. Beating the Elite Four and getting to the champion, I realized that En is now the new strongest trainer in the world. The plan is now fulfilled, and the castle Team Plasma has built rises from the ground, taking control of where the champion's building once resided. We trail after En, in the castle finding all sorts of things, like other guards, and even En's room he grew up in. A kid's room, with a basketball hoop, a train set, and even a skateboard ramp. That's pretty out of the ordinary for an evil team like Plasma. It was weird and strange, at least to me. We eventually find En, and challenge him without the slightest idea where Zekrom is. But at the last moment, when I was about to challenge the Hero of Light, Zekrom swoops in with the power of the Darkstone I was given, and becomes our Pokemon. We have the Battle of the Ages, just to find out that En wasn't the evil trainer all along. It was actually Getsus, a man who manipulated En, a kid who just wanted to save Pokemon, his only friends, as he was isolated at birth from other people because of Getsus. That's why his room had so much stuff in it, why he was so colorful and full of things to do. It's because he had no one. He had distractions and Pokemon that he could talk to because Getsus knew if he didn't understand humans, then he wouldn't be able to see another side of something. To me, it wasn't about the fact that Getsus was going to take the Pokemon everyone released. It was about the fact that En was broken from the beginning and didn't even know. After defeating Getsus, Adler, the former champion, and Cherin take him off, and it's just you and En, the two heroes, one of truth and one of ideals. He tells you the reason he wanted you to succeed. The reason he wanted you to challenge him is because what your Pokemon said that day was that they wanted to be with you. There was something about the scene that broke a bit in me. N was just a kid behind all of this, a kid who was manipulated and had innocent ideals on what he wanted to do for the world. A kid who had a gift and was controlled because of it. Isolated from human interaction, he just wanted to save the only beings that wanted to be with him. That's why Reshiram chose him, because of that pure heart of his. He cared, and that's what made me so sad. We had the whole battle because of the fact that N thought Team Plasma was trying to help the world in a role that was cursed from the start. This idea that there isn't a right side, that life's ideals aren't just one-sided, hit me so hard. Even when we tend to believe in something so hard, that doesn't mean it's right. Nor is it wrong. It's just another perspective. Life is multidimensional. Life isn't a road that everyone has to follow. I think for a while, it made me hard to accept that I wanted to follow a different road. Life felt a little like N, a quiet voice that said what I was doing was right, but the path I was taking was wrong. And that got frustrating. People telling you what they think you should have done, when your heart says you wanted to do something else. N wanted to save Pokemon, for the same reason you would want to help another person. The fighting that N had to do with his own mind throughout the story, because of the fact your Pokemon wanted to be with you, that right there resonated with me so much. And despite that noise, the story was about reassurance, helping the boy who couldn't talk to others understand people. Because for someone who could talk to Pokemon, he struggled to learn what it meant to be human, to stand with your ideals, to advocate for yourself, and most importantly, to help one another. N made me realize that even though people can have different ideals, it doesn't mean that you are wrong. You are still right. You are still strong. You still made the right choice. Even if that means it was just you at the end of that tunnel. N leaving at the end of the story, to go off with Reshiram, to fly into the sunset, was more about him just leaving Team Plasma. It was about leaving everything behind and going to find the world that would let him be him. No chains dragging him down, no people to tell him what he shouldn't and should believe. It was just him, Reshiram, and his dreams. I think there's something special about that. So, what does it mean to be a hero? Someone who is okay to walk on their own 2 feet, to be able to have ideals and to stand by them, to have a voice that is strong, even if everyone may not listen, to be kind and help those who need it, to be unapologetically you, even if others may not understand. To be a hero is to be free. At least, those are my ideals. However, there's always going to be lots of opinions. And if Pokemon White taught me anything, that will always be okay. Thank you for watching.